notte vene, poco a poco mi soglio bene, perché l'amore mio si solamente tu.
Good morning. How is your week? Sorry, filming this little bit on my phone because my camera batteries are dead because I've been filming all week quite a lot of special things in this episode. Did you like that song? It was Sophia Loren singing, and felicità means happiness in Italian, and I'm going to have a little chat to you about how to find joy in the mundane, the ordinary. At the end there's a little bit of a surprise. Hope you like it. I don't know if you will, but before that I'm going to do you a recipe for an orange and almond cake. Also, before we get started, do please like this video and subscribe if you like this video, and if you don't like it while you're watching, stop watching, go and watch something that you enjoy because you have that freedom. Also, if you do have any questions for me, I think maybe next I've got another Dolce Vita Diaries episode ready to go, and then I'm also going to do a Q&A, so if you have any questions that you would like me to answer, just leave them in the comments below on this video. I'll do a post also on Instagram. One of the questions I've been asked a lot, is this house an Airbnb? No, it's not. It's a private home of the person that I'm staying with. But we were talking about maybe once this whole thing dies down and Italy opens up again, that perhaps I could, I don't know, host some of you in an intimate retreat or something. If you're interested, I don't know, we'll think about it, it's just an idea. Also another question, did I make anything with the sewing machine that I borrowed from the old lady? Yes, of course I did. I made myself a little outfit out of a tablecloth this week. If you're not up to date, basically I only have like 2 winter outfits because I intended to come here for a weekend and then lockdown happened, so I've been having to make myself some lighter clothes. A big thank you to my patrons, people who donate monthly. You can donate whatever you want, and I know, gosh, I read this one woman said she's lost her job and she still wants to sort of give a little bit to my work, and I can't even talk about it because if I start talking about it I'll just start crying. It's so beautiful, and obviously no one's obliged to donate because my work will always be free and it will always be accessible to everyone, so it's your choice. But I just want to thank those who have chosen to help me keep going and working on this full time. Now, regarding the cake, Canadians will remember that I did an orange, almond and olive oil cake in one of my TV shows that aired in Canada. Now, today I'm doing a version that's gluten-free. I actually prefer the one I did for the show, which was with flour and almond meal. But anyway, I'll put both versions of the recipe on my website, carlyflavel.com, and you can choose. It won't be up there right today because I'm exhausted and I've been editing all week, so I've got to have a little bit of a rest, but it will be up there very soon, the next day or two. Yeah, I hope you like it. It's a really lovely, it's a lovely cake. It's very moist, so you need to make sure you cook it a lot, but I'll tell you all that later. Let's get started.
Zooby zooby zoo.
We had so many blood oranges going soft, so I wanted to celebrate them with this cake that actually uses the entire fruit. I chopped the oranges into pieces and cooked them in a little water for about 20 minutes or until the liquid is almost all evaporated.
Zooby zooby zoo. Zooby zooby zoo, zooby zoo, zooby zoo means that I love you.
We blend everything, pulp, juice, peel and all. Before blending, I tend to put it in the freezer for 10-15 minutes just to cool it down a little. We start our batter by whisking eggs into brown sugar. Add the olive oil, vanilla, sometimes I add some natural yogurt. And then we mix in the orange mixture. I mix the baking powder and some cinnamon with the almond meal or almond flour. If you're using flour as well, then you add that at this point. And then we gently fold our dry ingredients into our wet ingredients. You see this beautiful pattern I'm making. This was the first time I tried this, and although it looks gorgeous, I wouldn't do this at home because I found it then takes a lot longer to cook the bottom of your cake because the juice from the extra orange makes it a little wet. Just wobble your cake after about an hour, and although this is a very moist cake, you should keep it in the oven with some paper to protect the top from burning until it no longer wobbles in the center.
Zooby zooby zoo. Zooby zooby zoo. Zooby zooby zoo. Zooby zoo. Zooby zoo means that I love you. Zooby zooby zoo. Zooby zoo. Zooby zoo means that I love you. Zooby zooby zoo.
I think when life is easy, we don't have such a great need for joy. It's not that hard for us to slip into joy accidentally, right? But when we are in a state of fear or struggle or grieving or just anxiety, you need all the help you can get. And so this is really my intention here, is not to trivialize anyone's pain, but to just help you. And maybe it will work, maybe it won't, but I've got to give it a shot because thousands of you have said that it does maybe put a smile on your face, and it's not going to fix anything, of course, but I've got to try to do something, haven't I? So seeing as you are telling me that you want more joy, you want lightness, and I think let's not confuse lightness with a lack of respect or naivety. Of course, it's a very scary world out there. It's not one without the other, is it? It doesn't mean that, because you can find joy, that means you are disregarding the gravity of the situation or the brutality of life sometimes. It's not that way at all. In fact, if you have a heightened sensitivity to beauty and find childlike novelty in a simple detail, chances are you possess an equally high sensitivity to the pain and suffering of others. Chances are you agonize over words expressed to others and how it might hurt their feelings, with the same excruciating detail and time you devote to watching a beetle in its little earnest path. Some of you are grieving, some of you are struggling financially, others of you are just dealing with fear. I understand that, I really do. In fact, you have no idea how much I think about that. I'm a very sensitive person, and I can just lie awake at night, all night actually, thinking about the pain of strangers, and it does weigh on me. And then I think what people need is an antidote. Sometimes you can commiserate with pain, and that's fine. You might have friends or family who are doing that, but what I want to do is just be that tiny little reminder that, hey, there is joy, there is darkness, but there is always light, and everything is ephemeral, and this too shall pass. The good passes, the bad passes, which is why we must have this gratitude for the moment and say, I know I can't grasp onto anything. You can't hold onto anything, not a person, not a moment of happiness, not material things, obviously. So I think it's all about, again, what do I know? I'm just sharing my thoughts, and you're welcome to take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. But for me, I think that it is about finding joy in the mundane, in the ordinary, in the banal. If you read Alain de Botton, he has written a lot about this. And he talks actually about a lot of incredible artists, painters, who identified years and years ago that there is such beauty in the ordinary, and we tend to chase the extraordinary, thinking that this is where happiness lies, and in fact it's not. Often it is the ability to find joy and pleasure in very, very mundane things that I think gives us strength, that gives us an enduring contentment, not just the euphoria. Euphoria in itself is, by definition, a passing, fleeting moment, but contentment over years, over decades, of a lifetime. That type of contentment, I think, can only be found if you can find joy in the ordinary. Of course, you might say, well, Kylie, it's easy if you have a beautiful view of the Tuscan hills. definitely. But I've certainly been in situations where there hasn't been beauty around me, and I've made the beauty. I've made it myself. I've created it out of thin air, and you can do that too. I mean, I remember when I was a child and we were living on board the boat when we were being homeschooled and sailing around with my family, my mother, my father, my sister. Sometimes we would find ourselves in these storms where I was petrified. I was 10 years old, my sister was 8, and our parents were scared. So you know, when your parents are scared, there's reason to be terrified. And so we would go down below while they were trying to sail the boat, and we held each other's hands and we just sang. We sang and sang and sang and sang these silly little joyous nursery rhymes or something. You need that lightness. You need to remember there is lightness on the other side. This won't last forever. Again, I remember when I was 16 and I was working as a dishwasher in a restaurant, and it was a really dirty sort of job, and I was just in there alone with piles and piles, I mean like mountains of dishes, and I would come in for my shift and I wasn't earning much at all. And I thought, right, I'm going to make this the best shift ever. It was a disgusting kitchen. And I would put on this song and play it really loudly because I was the only one in this back part of the kitchen. And I would just sing and dance, and I would just scrub those pots and pans for hours and hours until 2 a.m. or whenever the restaurant would close. And it felt good. I don't know how, but somehow it managed to be something that there was a joy in it, I guess, yeah, and a sense of accomplishment. Right, I've got this whole wall of dirty dishes, and I'm going to attack it with joy and with dancing, and then again, I remember when I was 17, 18, and I was living in Japan alone. I was so lonely. I had actually really a lot of trouble with being followed by some strange perverts, and I actually had one time a detective stop me in the middle of the street and say, "You're being followed by the Japanese mafia, and you've got to be careful, and here's an illegal weapon that you can take to protect yourself." And I was just there in my school uniform because I was an exchange student, and I was terrified, and I actually developed insomnia then when I was living in Japan, because I love the Japanese, by the way, absolutely love them. The most beautiful, kind, humble population ever. But there were these cases where I was in quite a lot of danger and was followed home, and it would have strange men like banging on my door, and I was living alone for the first time in my life, very scared, very lonely, very homesick, and I would just stay awake all night because I was too scared to go to sleep. So I would just like try and keep myself awake, and I was sleep deprived, and I would sing again. I would put on music and I would just dance around my apartment, because you have to, otherwise what do you do? Just fret and wallow in your pain? No, you have to fight back. You have to tell, somewhere in your subconscious is that memory of joy, that belief in joy, that belief that you have been happy, you have been safe, you have been calm, and you need to find that trigger, whatever it is. And often I find music is that's such a powerful trigger, because it gets inside your soul, or at least I think many of you are like me, it gets inside my soul. I have, at the lowest points of my life, found that it just is like a switch. You flick it and my whole mood changes. It's like I can feel my brain, my heart rate, everything changing. And sometimes we need that. It's not an answer to our problems, but it is a coping mechanism, at least for me, because they say that in play, in this childish, just letting yourself go and dancing and singing and being silly, that's when you can calm yourself down. And it is a wonderful way to cope without taking drugs or drinking or having a cigarette or whatever, all of these substances. This is a very natural way to not solve your problems, but definitely find a way to endure them until they pass, until things get a bit easier. When I first moved to Rome, to Italy, and I've told this story before in one of my Q&As, but I lived in an apartment with no windows, none at all. Okay, so it was like basically underground, and it was so dark. But I was just like, okay, this is romantic. I'm going to put my music on, put my jazz, and light my candles because I can't see anything because it's so dark. And then I had also often the electricity would go out, and it was just a nightmare. And then at one point I had no money and I was bankrupt, and I couldn't even pay the rent for my tiny apartment with no windows. So in these cases, I mean, I was basically bankrupt, living in darkness, and all alone because I didn't know anyone when I first arrived in Italy, and it really was just music and dancing and waking up and doing something as mundane as cleaning my apartment or cooking myself breakfast, but doing it with joy. You've got to find the joy, and you might feel silly, but who cares? Because honestly, once you master the ability to generate your own joy in the mundane, this is like a secret weapon. This is just something which is like an armor, and it can protect you from all of the adversity that life can throw at you. And goodness knows it does throw a lot at us sometimes, and it feels unbearable, and sometimes it's like one thing after the other, and you need to be able to trust in yourself, because rather than looking to another person or to a certain event in your life that you say, well, that's going to make everything okay. We don't know anything. It's so much uncertainty. But if you can generate your own joy inside you, it needn't be dancing and singing. That's just what helps me. But whatever it is, you need to be able to access it. And it's like a muscle, because the more you do it, I mean, now I know, like, I just hear one bar of a song and I'm twirling around my kitchen like a crazy person, but it is just extraordinary how much strength it gives me, and how in the times when I have felt just so weak and defeated, and then this just gives me, it's not going to top you up completely, but it just gives you that little bit of extra reserves of energy to get through the day. Just get through that one day, because that's all we can do, really, isn't it? You can't sort of dwell on the future and think about the bigger picture. It's too overwhelming. But we can just say, what are we going to do in this moment? Things like housework, or just making yourself or your loved ones a meal, that is where we need to look for the joy, because these are things which we are doing on a daily basis. So imagine if you had joy on a daily basis. Maybe you do, and I dearly hope you do. I read your comments, and you all seem like such wonderful people, and if you do have a way of accessing it that you'd like to share with people, just leave it in the comments below, because I do believe this is what we need. It is so necessary, and yet it's very difficult. I mean, there is just sort of libraries of literature written on this subject about how to access joy or manifest joy in the ordinary, irrespective of the context, irrespective of the people around you or the adversity that you're facing. And I'm not an expert. I'm still a work in progress. Often, I'd say almost 90% of the time, it's been when I've been alone. I haven't had friends around me. I haven't had a partner. I haven't had family. I have just been alone, and having that moment where you think, right, I've got two options here. I can just crumble, or I can get up and try and keep trying and try to smile at this and try to laugh at this and say, goodness, this is not the end of your story, Kylie. I don't want to make it sound too whimsical, as in, oh, it's just a matter of waking up and changing your mindset. No, it's hard. It's really hard. But we've got to try, because otherwise it's an insult to the gift of life, to the gift of being on this planet and being a part of the human race. It's, well, anyway, it works for me, and I can only hope that it might work for you too. When I say find the joy in the banal, I really do mean something as ordinary as scrubbing the toilet, stacking the dishwasher, with that trigger of a good song. You find your song, you find it, and I know you have it. I know you have that song where you cannot resist. Let me show you what I mean.